We're all here to ask some hard questions and to express the highest of aspirations, and so our sister Claire McClinton is here asking those hard questions, imagining what the poisoning of a city's water and its people means for the entire country. What's in your pipeline? We are aspiring to understand the kind of new society that could be there if the new technology that's today displacing so many workers could be used for everyone's benefit. Claire McClinton is going to share the challenge and the triumph that's possible when we absolutely do not stop and we aim for the top. Thank you so much, Claire.
This is the chant that greeted President Obama when he came to Flint last week. What do we want? Clean water. When do we want it now? If we don't get it, shut it down. What do we want? Clean water. When we want it? Now. If we don't get it, shut it down. All right, that's how we greeted the president last week. I send you greetings from the occupied and poisoned city of Flint, Michigan.
Thank you.
That's a sad thing to say in 2016 in a city in Michigan surrounded by the largest basin of fresh water in the world. I could tell you stories. We finally got a media breakthrough from the blackout that we experienced because that water was turned on to the Flint River in April of 2014. For 2 years, we've been crying, picketing, screaming, taking over City Hall, hoping somebody would hear our plea. Finally, the media showed up and the world saw what was happening. So I want to start out by thanking each and every one of you, many environmentalist groups, churches, individuals, community groups, for coming to the assistance of Flint, Michigan. Thank you. We appreciate the water, every bottle, every dime, every hug, and every prayer. We appreciate it. And one day we're going to have a society worthy of the people like that who come to each other's aid. We don't have that now. I'm bringing you a message today to sound the alarm for you to learn from the experiences of Flint and Michigan. Since the activist was able to break the silence about the poisoning of our city, you saw Time magazine with the baby covered with rashes. You saw National Geographic. You saw the Washington Post and the Washington Times and the New York Times and all the rest of it about the suffering children, the Legionnaires' deaths. You got to hear about that. But the untold story that I'm here to share with you today is the story of dictatorship in Flint and Michigan. That's the story that is not being told. That's the story I'm here to share with you today and sound the alarm. Because how can you fight for clean water when you don't have democracy? How can you fight for voters' rights when you don't have democracy? How can you fight for health care when you don't have democracy, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, brothers and sisters? I want to tell you about Public Act 436. It used to be Public Act 4, but the good people of Michigan Democrats and Republic got rid of Public Act 4 because the people in Michigan believe in democracy. We don't like dictatorship over there. We are a proud state with a rich union history, a rich civil rights history. We are a humanitarian state. We don't believe in somebody coming in, ruling us, humiliating us, telling us we don't know how to run our cities. But that's what happened when Governor Snyder dictator-in-chief signed a law to impose dictatorships on certain cities in Michigan. Now, what are we talking about here? We're talking about Public Act 436, where the governor can send in an individual to your city or school district and replace your local elected officials and your mayor. Now, we need to understand what's going on in Michigan. Somebody needs to write a book about what's going on in Michigan. You know, somebody wrote a book called What's the Matter with Kansas? We need to write a book about what's the matter with Michigan, because, Dorothy, you're not in Kansas anymore. You're in a dictatorship. You're in an alternative universe. You are poisoned because an emergency manager elected by nobody came in there and turned the Flint River water on because they were on a pathway to privatize it and taking over our water. They are trying to privatize our water. They're taking away our water rights. You can't steal an asset like water without imposing dictatorship on the people. We need to learn the lessons about that. And Michigan can teach the whole country about that. So the emergency manager with these powers, what is their main driving force of the emergency managers? Emergency managers are there to serve corporate interests by doing two things in a city: selling off assets like water, like the Pontiac Silverdome in Pontiac, Michigan, that the taxpayers paid $55 million to help build, where the Lions used to play football, that was considered the state of the art. They called it the eighth wonder of the world, the Silverdome. The emergency manager sold it for $500,000. But did they ask the people of Pontiac? No. That's the kind of power emergency manager has. The other purpose of emergency manager is to privatize services. Most of our public employees are ASME members. They clean up our parks, they pick up our garbage. They're teachers and other public servants, and the emergency managers is on a lightning speed mission to privatize and take over and bust the union movement in our rich union state of Michigan. Ask the Muskegon Heights teachers. The emergency manager came to Muskegon Heights. He immediately fired all the teachers, brought in Mosaica. Any teachers out there heard of them? A private company whose purpose is to take over school districts. The state of Michigan let the emergency manager hand it over to them just by signing the order. So,
Gary, Indiana now.
oh, okay. So So I'm here to bring you this message about the dismantling of democracy in Michigan. And I'm going to close now, but I want to say this. Unless we wake up and see this fascist danger arising in Michigan, because what happens in Michigan won't stay in Michigan unless all of us come together and act. And I thank you so very much for this opportunity.